Hello, art friends. In this video, I'm going to break away from my traditional square abstract collages and use landscape for inspiration to do collage. So I'm just starting out with some basic watercolor paper that I've cut into roughly 5 by 8. I've pulled a stack of papers that reminded me of earth colors or landscape colors. And I'm just going to start building. Now, with the landscape collages, these are super simple because all you need to think about is doing things in layers of like strata layers. So big horizontal strips of collage down the page. It keeps it really simple. If you think about landscapes and you look off into the distance, everything is kind of in horizontal planes. So I'm following that process to create these as well. I'm just thinking about big long strips and sort of layering them to create something that will look like a landscape. Now with this first one, I'm using a lot more traditional colors and placement that you would think of a landscape. So, blue for the sky, greens and browns for what would be ground planes or ground strata areas. And the fun thing about this is that you don't need a lot of different collage papers. I think these probably maybe are like 6 or 7 at the most kind of rows of collage paper down. So it keeps it fairly simple. So I decided I wanted to go with a little bit brighter sky. And I had some tissue paper that had this sort of pretty blue on it, and then a solid piece of blue with that ripped edge, which I thought looked kind of interesting. It kind of reminded me of a silver lining in a cloud or cloud shapes. And now I'm trying to decide what I want to do for the ground plane. When I think of landscapes, at least traditionally, I think about having light to dark from sort of the horizon to the foreground. The stuff closer to me feels sometimes darker and more clear. So I'm working with the concept of the sky to a brighter sort of horizon area and then a darker foreground. Even though I'm thinking of this still in strata pieces, just to vary it and make it a little bit more interesting towards the bottom, I broke up some of those pieces so they weren't the full width, but were sort of partial areas. Even though everything is still very horizontal, I'm trying to keep that sort of strata feeling, even if I split the pieces in different locations. These were just some old paper towels that I had in my studio. I use them when I am painting to just wipe my brush off on, and it bleeds through and makes these really, really interesting soft patterns sometimes, plus the texture of the paper towel. So I was trying to see if maybe that would work in there. I think that blue-green piece at the bottom is also a piece of paper towel. So I'm going to start gluing these down. I'm happy with sort of the base pieces that are there. And with these, I don't rework them like I do with my other abstract, mini and square collages that I do. These I keep really simple and just do one layer from top to bottom, and I overlap the pieces to create some of that depth. With my other collages, I do go back and add pieces on top and fill in spaces. But with these landscapes, to keep them really simple, I'm just going to keep like one piece overlapping the next piece and just basically cascade it down my paper rather than thinking about building up, multiple layers. I think this makes the landscape it feels more fresh and less muddy, and it still gives you that nice collage, especially if you're using transparent papers. That's that collage effect where you can see some layers and you still feel like there's some depth in it because of the pieces overlapping. I think for anybody who is starting out with collage, this is really one of the more simple approaches I think you can start with, is to do these simple landscapes where all of your pieces are basically going to be similar in size and shape, so you don't have to think about it too much. And you can just focus on building that atmosphere from, the top of your landscape to the bottom of your landscape with color and value, and not have to worry so much about, the size of pieces and that whole adding that extra sort of variable in. So here I'm just going to put the final couple pieces at the bottom, and then see if there's any little spots that stand out that I might want to just fill a small piece in over. And I just use matte medium for this. You certainly could use a gloss medium or the glazing medium. I used to use glazing medium, and then everything, ended up having a little bit of a sheen to it. And I found sometimes I didn't like that, so I just figured I would do everything with matte medium. And then if it's a piece I really like, I can always go back over it with, the gloss medium or a gloss varnish or something if I want that shine effect. All right, so I made a little adjustment in that darker piece. I think because I felt this brown piece was going to be too big, so I was going to try to move it down a little bit, and I didn't want to have a gap there. And all of these papers, except for the second layer, the second blue one up there, are papers that I created mostly with jelly plate and stencils. I like to create a lot of textures with my jelly plate and use some stencils. Because that brown piece is so big in that bottom corner, I felt like I needed to pull it up into the landscape a little bit just to balance out the color. And then I'm just trying to get everything squished down and glued really well. Now this piece was actually a piece of paper that I used to roller off my rollers when I was doing some gel plate papers. So I keep all of those because I love the layers that build up on those too. And this had some gold or bronze metallic on it, so it has a little bit of a shine. And now I'm just tidying up and sort of cleaning up any edges, seeing if there's any other little pieces I want to put in. There was a little bit of a white gap there, so I added some small dots in there to mimic the ones in the yellow piece there. I'm trying to decide if I want to do a little bit more interesting in the blue up there. So I decided to add a piece that has a little bit of pattern and a little bit darker blue, just to break up that blue, because it's all the same color blue. So it's not super interesting. But you can see with these, it's really still all very much layers. sort of cascading down the piece. And if you don't have to think about sort of scattering little pieces everywhere, and you can keep the strata theme in mind, these little landscapes actually are quite easy to do and can come together pretty quickly. Now here I might be fiddling too much, trying to decide if I want to add a little bit more of that sort of metallic-y gold in there. I was just still concerned that that big brown area down at the bottom was too solid. I mean, it's got some lines in it, but I think I just wanted to break that up a little bit. And now I'm just giving everything a good coat to keep it all stuck down. So here's the second one. So this time I thought, I'm still thinking landscape, but I'm going to try a little bit more creative approach, in that I may not use all the same traditional landscape colors in the landscape like spots that you would normally use them. So, blue sky, green grass, that sort of thing. I pulled some more vibrant colors. I'm using this piece because it was in the other collage, so I want to have just a little bit of a tie-in to the other collage. And I actually don't remember if I even keep that piece. I think I may get rid of it later. But I wanted to use some more fun, sort of non-traditional landscape colors and see if I could still come up with something that looked like a landscape. I love that little wavy purple piece. Reminded me of like water or rolling hills. So now I'm just going to play with some pieces for a little while. This one I think took a little bit longer to come together because I had so many pieces that I really liked that I think I was trying to put in probably too many. But you'll see that I play with this a little bit longer. So I'm just going to go through that and add a little background music here while I finish this one up. So now everything is pretty much glued down, and I'm just going to add some final touches and fill in some of those little white gaps. I added a little piece of that purple from the bottom there, and then I decided I wanted to do a little bit more solid orange at the top in one corner just to make that a little bit more interesting. And now it's time to trim them up and put them in my sketchbook. They're completely dry. You want to make sure that these are completely dry before you cut them, because if collage paper is still a little bit wet or damp when you try to cut, it tends to just kind of pull it off and smear rather than actually cut it nice. So because I'm using watercolor paper, it's a little bit thicker, so I probably could have cut it without the ruler, but I just like to have a nice clean edge, so I just grabbed my metal ruler and cutting mat and just trimmed it up from there. I also took my PVA glue out and re-glued down some of the edges. Sometimes the thicker paper doesn't stick as well. And just looked for any little spots where it might be loose. I wanted to re-glue to make sure it was down really well. And I cut the second one out, and here are they finished and cut out. And then here's just some closer up versions trimmed out. And I also had done two previously, and here's those where I actually came back with a gel pen or some acrylic markers and added some doodles on as well. So it's fun to go back sometimes and also add marks to them. Well, I hope you'll give doing landscape collages a try. They're super fun and easy.